Welcome, everybody, to today's class, our master class. It's called List and Learn. I'm Joseph Trujillo. I'm your host. And before we get started on this amazing master class that we're having today with one of the best in the business, guys, you guys have tuned in on the right day, at the right time, for the right attraction. But once again, we're always just dialing up next level, right? And I want to have a real talk moment with you guys. So, for many agents, right, becoming a powerful listing agent, I'm sure if you guys felt like I felt in the beginning, it's like climbing a mountain, right? You're just constantly competing, especially against established names and just learning how to handle seller objections. And often you find yourself wondering if you have the confidence, do you have the tools, do you have the skill sets, or even the presence to secure listings? We've all been there. So when you're walking into a home and you have this knowing that the sellers are interviewing other agents, or maybe you're even second guessing your presentation, is it strong enough? Or do I even need a presentation? Like, these are some of the questions that ramble through some of our minds. But here's the truth is that the mechanics, yes, they absolutely matter. But what really matters is your preparation, your mindset, your ability to connect. That's why today we're bringing in one of the top mega listing agents in our network, Chris Fox, my brother. He has built a phenomenal career on winning listings by mastering not just the presentation, but everything that leads up to it, in between, and after. So today he's going to break down the strategies that have helped him and his team shift from maybe some of these insecurities to consistency, right? From hoping to win a listing to walking in to come list me appointments. So without further ado, I would love to welcome my brother at arms, my partner, Mr. Chris Fox. Come on to the stage, my brother. How are you?
I am good. How are you, Joseph?
Oh, my brother. Any better, brother? My name would be Chris Fox. Any better? My name would be Chris Fox.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having me on, and I'm truly humbled to be a part of this conversation. And if I've got to be honest, it's a little ironic that I was asked to speak on a listing presentation because, to be transparent, that's always been like my biggest insecurity and where I feel like I'm the weakest and the things that I'm working on. So I don't truly call myself a master there yet. And I actually almost use that as an excuse to not do this, but I thought more about it. I just feel like there's a bigger purpose there. I also considered asking you to change the topic, and I was like, wait, we need to get into this because my emphasis is, to achieve a level of success and to win the listing. Having not had the perfect listing presentation really kind of sunk in and just started making me think, like, why am I not so dependent on the listing presentation? And I think that's where the magic's at. And that's, with your permission, we'll definitely go over, the A's and Z's of my listing presentation. But there's so much that starts well before the listing appointment that leads to success. So that's what my passion is. That's what I want to kind of share with people.
I love that, brother. I love that. I think as you break down like your framework, right? I know you have a structure of some items that you're going to share with everybody. And I know when you and I were talking yesterday, you had talked about how the listing appointment starts way before you actually arrive for that appointment, right? So I would love for you to like start off by sharing with us a little bit about the mindset and the preparation. Why is it so critical, and how do you personally approach that moment before you actually have like the listing appointment?
Well, obviously it starts with, your mindset, and the night before, is really important, but being early, I can't stress being early enough and how that's helped me. I'm always early, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. But, I'll show up 30 minutes early. It allows me to settle in and really digest the neighborhood, do a couple laps, and really do some breath work and really calm down. Public speaking is terrifying to me, and I don't find listing appointments any different. From day one still to this day, when I go on a listing appointment, it's kind of a little bit of a freak out moment. It's so important to me to get the listing, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. So having that time with myself to kind of just settle in and do some breath work and, get into the appointment is really important. If you show up, late with your hair on fire, frazzled, that energy, the sellers can sense that, and I think they mirror our energy. So if we can be very calm and ready to go, I think they'll be ready for us.
That's awesome, brother. I love that you share that, because like we all have these, for lack of a better word, like our own like rituals, right? Like our own prep ways of prepping. So what I heard you say is that you do some breath work, you create like a calmness in yourself, right? In your approach. So that way, when you walk into these appointments, the energy, right, that is present at that moment creates an environment, a space, a free, maybe a safe space for them to be able to connect with you deeper.
Yeah, I mean, if you're uncomfortable, they're certainly going to be uncomfortable. And
right.
I'm very mindful of that, even preparing for today. It's like when you witness someone nervous on stage, I don't know about you, but I get nervous for them, and it becomes really uncomfortable. And you want it to be a comfortable, interaction, and that starts with you and the energy that you're bringing to the appointment.
Yeah, I love that, bro. I do the same exact thing, by the way, man. I do a thing called box breathing, right? So, and it just helps, just right here, bro, just to be able to, like, people overlook the power of little things like oxygenation, like clarity of mind, like being able to walk into these uncomfortable spaces at times, and some people would find it probably like I'm sure people on this call are resonating with you, brother. Like as often as you're doing listing appointments and you're taking that on, you still have like this positive, let's call it nervousness, right? Like a basketball player or an athlete ready to perform. Do you kind of equate yourself to that?
Yeah, I don't know if it ever goes away. I don't know if it's just so important to me, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. So
yeah,
it's truly self-inflicted, but I don't know. I think it's important to be passionate. And if you're not passionate, enthusiastic, and I feel like the day that maybe I don't feel that way before a listing appointment, maybe it's not that appointment. And then it's like, what are you doing here?
So good, brother. That is so good. And by the way, guys, as you guys are watching this live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, no matter where you guys are at, or if you're going to watch this in the future, like this is an open dialogue, guys. We have one of the best in the business here. Make sure you put your comments. We're going to come back to those at the end of the call. But just to dial in next steps with that, if you could, Chris, let's talk about first impressions, the little small details that count, like impressions and seating. What's the psychology behind some of your approaches in that methodology?
Well, again, not to get so far off of the listing presentation, but it's just like you're not showing up to the door in today's era having them not done some research on you. So
right.
I feel like, I've admitted that listing presentations are kind of my weak spot, but I very rarely don't get hired, but it's because I've created I've done the back work I don't think I'm ever, 9 out of 10 times, let's just say the seller's not interviewing any other agent. It's like, it's a come list me call.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's powerful. How do you get there? So like, how do you get the come list me calls? Is it because they've done background on you and they see that you have a track record of success?
Well, I don't even think it's necessarily the success, but I think it's like, who you are as a human. And I think that's really important to dive into. It's like, I encourage everyone to research themselves, Google yourself. What do you see? Go onto your social media, put yourself in the consumer's shoes, and what are they seeing? Are you impressed with what you're seeing of yourself?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of power in that. And I agree with you. Like consumers are doing background checks on us well before they make the call, right? So that validation is occurring. So check mark that. Go back, everybody. You guys are encouraged by Chris here. Go back and see what you look like. Put yourselves in the shoes of the consumer and see what that looks like. And then what next would you recommend that they do, Chris?
Well, I mean, often on the appointment, who are you as a human? I always, want to know what the closest 25 people around me think of me. You know, it's like it's always that conflict. Like, who cares what people think about you? Well, I do care what people think of me, and I think that's done me a service in building a brand and building a career. You know, my reputation and my image is the most important thing to me, and I think I've done a really good job building relationships and nurturing those relationships. You know, using social media as that platform. But you know, we could go super deep into this, but like, you know, how are you representing yourself? You know, what are the opinions people form of you, and to be confident that like you have the power to change that at any given point in time. You know, there was a point in my life where, you know, I certainly wasn't on a positive trajectory. You know, so it's like, regardless of where you're at in that reputation, you know, spectrum, I think, you know, tomorrow's a new day. Today's a fresh start, and you know, start working towards, you know, that image and you know, being in a healthy environment.
Yeah, no, I love that, brother. I think a lot of us are experiencing a time when, because of market conditions, or maybe it's career change, whatever that looks like, everybody, like to Chris's point, like today's this opportunity for you to recreate, right, this public perception, this professional platform that you have, because it does create that first impression, right? And so let's talk about that, Chris. Talk to us about, you know, the next step, right? You prepped, you're walking in, you got the appointment, and now you're like at the door. Like, what happens next for you?
So, you know, knock, knock, you know, come in, you know, obviously introduce yourself. And, you know, I think it's really important to, you know, connect with the client, you know, and ask for, you know, a comfortable place to get seated. And let them choose what that comfortable space is for them. And, you know, for me, I've always, and I've had coaches say, you know, the opposing, but I like to sit on the same side of the table as them. I always just feel like we're on the same side. We're in this together. We're going through the process together, you know, especially in today's era with all the media that I have, like we're sharing a screen. So we need to be on the same side of the table. But I just feel like we're an alliance, and we're aligned with our energy. And I feel like when you sit across from the table from them, you know, you're in a more, you know, negotiating, argumentative stance, if you will. So I like to be on the same side of the table with them. And often they're going to jump immediately into, you know, what's your commission and what do you think my house is worth? And you just got to really slow that down. And like, you know, those are great questions, and we'll get there. For me, the most important thing is to see the home, you know, and I've been coached other ways also, like don't waste your time seeing the home and giving them the opportunity to, you know, to add the emotional value to the home on that tour. But for me, there's so much happening on that tour. It is the most important part of the appointment, and there's a lot of opportunity for you there. So, you know, I asked, you know, this would be a good time. Can we take a look at the house? Can you show me around? But, you know, in that walk, you got to be observant. And something else, let me back up a little bit. The technology is pretty amazing, and we've subscribed to Plod, and I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's a recording device. So one of the first things I do once we get seated is ask permission to, you know, record this entire appointment, and a Plod device, and you know, let them know that this isn't only for me, but it's for team members that aren't present on the appointment. There's going to be a lot of hands working on this transaction and trying to execute at a very high level for you. And if we can transcript this entire, you know, listing appointment, that'll help us better serve you and help team members really dive in and help me, you know, go back to things that I promised and said that I would do and revisit and make sure, you know, everything's super, super smooth. But back to the walkthrough, you know, there's family photos on the wall, you know, you're in your garage. What kind of, for me, activities are endless with me, you know? And so like that opportunity to see what they're into, you know, do they have a road bike? Is there a dirt bike? Is there a sand car in there? You know, we can start, you know, talking about common interests, and it really helps me build rapport with the client, you know, and family photos on the wall, you know, you can kind of get to see the age of their kids and have conversations about, you know, personal things, but it really gives me the opportunity to bond with them. I also ask permission to film the home, you know, you're doing through, and we'll get to some of the options that I like to present the seller when choosing a path for them. But
yeah,
recording the home is really important, because you're going to get back to your desk and you're not going to remember all the intricacies and details of the home. But if you can go back and you can scrub photos or videos, And also, if you have a team, it's really going to help your team members who weren't there digest the home when you're formulating a plan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That was, one nugget that you dropped, brother. I want to go back to it really quick in case some of you overlooked it. Was Chris talked about positioning, right? Like positioning in the home is what I heard you share, Chris, about like sitting on the same side of the table. I think that's just genius, bro. I mean, when we position ourselves, there's like unspoken body language that communicates, right? So when you sit at the head of the table, right, like I remember I was in government service, like the people that sit at the head of the table are the people that are most authoritative, right? But when you sit next to somebody, you create collaboration, you create conversation, you create an environment where it's not like for lack of better words, it's not a pissing contest or opposition. Like, so I love that you shared that, Chris, because I think the non communicative channels that we use and body language means a lot way before you even speak. So I just wanted everybody to make sure that they picked up on that, because that is such a powerful tool that also just gives you like the power of being able to create this confidence and project it to others. So that way you are authoritative, but you're also very collaborative. So that was fire, bro. Thank you for that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if they like you, they'll hire you. How many? I can't say that I've been hired above the aunt or the uncle that's never sold a home on many occasions. It's just it is what it is. But it's evidence that if they like you, they'll hire you. So I think we all need to take a step back and be humans and just connect with people and be likable and that'll go. If they don't like you, you're already done. I think they're going to make a decision pretty quickly in the appointment. So, be mindful of how you're representing yourself and connecting with them.
Yeah, and that connection leads through a series of questions. Would you agree? Like asking the right questions, like control through questions. Like how do you approach those mechanics in this conversation with them?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm completely aware that the interviewer controls the conversation, and it's become a top priority of mine, and it's something that I'm really fresh into. I've kind of always defaulted to me, diarrhea of the mouth. Look how amazing I am. Look at my presentation. Look at this. Look at that. Look at that. And nobody cares about that stuff. So, I really think that organically, I'm good at connecting with people. I love humans. I love building relationships. I love making friends. And, real estate wasn't, something that I planned for. I'm just a very social person, and thank goodness I found real estate because I was able to leverage my friendships and my relationships into a way to make a living. But it didn't start like, okay, I need to build relationships, I need to make friends, like I'm doing real estate now. For many of you, that may be the course, but you need to understand that this is a relationship business. And I've never knocked a door. I've never had a lead source. I've never cold called a human being in my life. My business is 100% organic, funneled from me out being social and making friends. So I can't stress that enough. I think that's another reason why, I've not leaned so heavily on a listing presentation, if you will, is because I get to the point where friends are calling me to list their home. Everywhere I go, you got to be a little bit of a stalker to be successful in this industry. Media makes that easy for us. And, all the things that I do out with my family, traveling, I'm always meeting new people and finding them on social media. And then you just insert yourself into their lives very tastefully. And you just become a household social media name. And it's like the number one goal is when anybody, that you've ever had contact with thinks of a realtor, they need to think of you. So what are you doing to be that person in your group? And what groups are you joining, or what opportunities are you providing yourself? It's like the more active I am, the more I participate. I use it as an excuse to ask my wife to go buy stuff. But it's like being out in Havasu, being out in Glamis, cycling, all my health and wellness journey that I've been on. I meet so many amazing people, and you connect with them, and that's a funnel business most people aren't tapping into.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You're right, brother. Like social relation, it's a relationship business, right? So, and you've been masterful at that clearly, by doing the unprecedented things. Like agents are probably listening to this saying, "Wow, this guy's a top tier listing agent, and he doesn't use a listing presentation as a standard tool, right?" Um, and you attribute that to your ability to communicate and asking the right questions. um, it's a skill set. Now, how did you develop that? Was it just repetition, like listing appointment, or is this just a god-given gift that you got, bro? Talk to us.
No, it came from me not knowing what the heck I was doing and just showing up. I came from very humble beginnings, and out of desperation to get a paycheck and not be homeless. It's like I just showed up and just wanted to talk through, and I didn't have any tools in my toolbox. I've never had any traditional coaching. I kind of learned, I don't encourage this, but I learned the hard way, and kind of self-developed for a paycheck. But being authentic and being passionate and being sincere are some of the things that I think really drive this to the finish line. It's like people sense that. I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. I didn't deserve the listing on so many occasions, yet I still got hired. I think the sellers could feel the passion in me and feel my promise to get this done, and at whatever stakes, I was going to get it done, and at the highest level I knew how to do. And I think that they could sense that. They could read that in me.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, bro, absolutely. Like when my experience of you has been like, when I'm around you, I feel like something's going to get done, right? I feel like something's going to get done. Like you carry that about yourself. And I think it also is very apparent that the people around you, your team members, agents that you're partnering with, they're also picking up on that sense of like, let's do something here, and it's positive and it feels good. So just want to acknowledge you for that, my brother.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Now, I got some personal stuff, bro, that I want to extract from you. So, like, I got a listing appointment coming up on Thursday, so I'm going to use some of these mechanics, right? So, the home tour, like you talked about walking, and you're being observant, you're watching, you're seeing pictures, you're seeing that structure. Sometimes it's been my experience, especially with sellers that I don't know, they jump into commission or price. Like, how do you redirect that? And why is the home tour so important before you start talking numbers? Or what's your strategy with that?
Yeah, we can all give a estimate, but I don't know. It gets, guys think I'm weird, but it's just like I have to feel and sense the home. I have to experience the home, sight, sound, smells. We're walking through from a buyer's perspective, and I feel like I have a really good ability to put myself in a buyer's shoes and feel like where that property is going to land in that price bracket based on how excited or not I am about the home. And walking the home, you're multitasking to the fullest. And it's funny, I'm listening to the Audible. I think it's just one thing or something, and it talks all about not multitasking and focusing on one thing. But when
Right.
you're doing the exception is when you're doing a property walk with your sellers, you've got to identify deferred maintenance. You've got to appreciate improvements. Or the kitchen, does it have the wow factor, and did they overly invest in the kitchen and haven't touched the bathrooms? What kind of wear and tear is on the house? Was the house beautifully remodeled 5 years ago, and they've got 9 kids and 14 dogs that just ran it into the ground? Like, it's like photographs don't get the details. So you really got to absorb that. But I'm putting together a plan, like different options that they can choose to get back to the table. And the only way I can really put that together is by taking notes on the home. And that's something else that's really important. Is like you're videoing. I'm also taking notes the entire time on nicks and dings and opportunities for improvement. Like, because I'm also thinking of my investor, Mike DiCarlo, he's my dude. And
Yeah.
when I'm going to funnel a listing to him, it's like, what is his investment going to be? he needs the, whoever you're funneling your investments to, you need to be their eyes and their ears. So you're documenting this home for them as well to get a cash offer. So you need to provide them with as much visual evidence as you can to get a competent offer that potentially your sellers will bite on if that's the right path for them.
Yeah, that's so good, brother. I love that you don't just have one path, right? You're not showing up to this listing appointment with, hey, I'm going to throw a sign in the front yard, slam it on the MLS, and let's go, right? It's a one-trick pony, essentially. Knowing you and your repertoire of what you're capable of doing, you're presenting options to them, right? You're formulating these options for them. That's what I hear you saying. So that to me as a seller, as you do that, it makes me feel like part of the team, right? Instead of being dictated to what's going to happen, you're letting me be part of the team and you walk them through this discovery process. I think that's masterful that you do that.
Yeah, this walk that you're on in the home gives you the opportunity, like I said, to build rapport and have conversations. But you got back to asking questions. You got to find out what their motivation is, where they're going, what their timelines are. When do they want to be in their next location? Do they have a daughter's senior year in high school and they're absolutely not going to pull her out of school until she finishes her senior year, and you're working off a certain time frame? So there's a lot to take in and note when you're on this walk. Maybe grandpa's going to a retirement home, and he's just physically not in the position to take care of himself anymore, and they just need this done. He's going downhill quick and they need out, and a cash offer makes sense for them. Time is more important than money, and money's not, believe it or not, money's not always the most important thing in a seller's life. You don't know what their position is. They could have some financial obligations. They could, have some back tax stuff that's worrying them, and they need something done quickly. So you got to ask the right questions to find out, what they're looking to achieve. Also, what their budget is. Do they have any funds to invest in their home? Are they looking to spend any money in this process, or are they just, there's options at the end of this discussion, but without that information, you can't help guide them.
Yeah, no, that's so key, brother. So key, especially just for communication, right? Like finding out like what is the problem that they're experiencing? Like why do they have to sell? Like you need to get in the weeds with them in order to really provide solution. I mean, that's what we get paid for. We're just highly paid solution finders, right? So like find the problem, guys, provide the solution, and you can move forward quite successfully.
And you bring up, highly paid, and that's a real topic and on a lot of sellers' mind. Unfortunately, most sellers think that we're all the same and that we are overpaid. And, I think it's really important to showcase the value and what separates you from your competition. My team has put together one of the most amazing, the most gorgeous listing presentations I've ever seen. And they pull their hair out because I'm like, how do I get there? Where is it? Where do I find it? Like right. Every once in a while I need to rely on it. I'm like, I don't even know how to find it. They're like, it's in Canva, found solutions for that. But, a lot of what's on that presentation is your track record. What have you done and what are you investing in the transaction? I think that I overinvest, and I'm working on correcting that. And I think that overinvestment did me a service in the beginning because I feel like I've been known as the guy that throws major launch parties to get homes sold, and it's fun too, but there's, again, I could go down so many rabbit holes, but throwing these launch parties, as I mentioned, I'm not real comfortable getting on the phone or door knocking. I don't like it, and it's been a block for me. I dislike when people knock on my door, so I don't want to be that guy. But something that's been extremely healthy for me to kind of overcome that is when I throw a launch event, it's a comfortable conversation to go knock on doors. We create save the date magnets. So we do, circle prospecting with multiple touches. So, the first touch is, 10 days out, we'll go door knock, 250, 500 homes, whatever the budget is, with a save the date magnet, inviting them to the neighbors to this launch event. And the nosy neighbors all want to see inside the home. And then we follow it up with a second door knocking campaign with an invitation full page postcard inviting them to the event. So now I'm reaching out to the neighbors and creating listing opportunities to, add another funnel to my business, but I'm leveraging that listing to do so. And that's been extremely successful. And
yeah, that brings up such a good point, bro. Let's talk about this right now. So I hear you saying the launch party, all these other branding and marketing elements. So it's a big misconception that it doesn't take some investment, right, of time and money to successfully market listings at times. So that way you create other opportunities, right? So on average, what would you say your efforts into promoting a seller's home, not just to be sold, but to create other listing opportunities, maybe buyer opportunities? What does that look like for you as a listing agent? What does that investment look like?
Well, it's also an important, getting back to the listing appointment, it's also a really important conversation that you get to have with your sellers, and showing value in what you bring to the table. And often I framework, when they're battling commission, it's like, it's more of a budget. What kind of budget are you giving me to execute at a high level? And I give them, compensation options, but there's a takeaway with every reduction in compensation, because you're shrinking my budget is the way that I word it, the bigger the budget,
that's good.
I don't have the budget to do save the date magnets and do 2 door knocking campaigns with my team. I don't have, you've robbed me of my budget to separate me from the sea of agents out there by not giving me the budget to host a launch party and invite the neighbors and get 250 people, physically in your home and make this thing go viral and do content events. And, we're spending, it's a lot, some of these luxury launch events are costing me nearly $20,000, but is it too much? Yes. But, I think it put me on the map in certain neighborhoods, and if you invest in that door knock and that invitation to the neighbors show up to these launch parties and they're like, what are you doing? And we're like, we're selling real estate at a really high level. And they're like, wow, you do when you sell houses? We're like, absolutely. It gets the neighborhood talking, and you're certainly at the top of the list when they consider selling or have a conversation with a neighbor that's thinking about selling. So I'm investing in the successful outcome for the seller 1,000%. However, I am mindful that it's also been another funnel of business.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that is so good, brother. Because what I hear you also sharing about that is you're creating an experience, right? You're creating an experience for other people in the market to get to know you and your business. So the branding and marketing of having another event, like most agents aren't thinking like that. Most agents are thinking very linear. I'm going to list the home and I'm going to do an open house. It's so like structured, so cookie cutter that it's boring. Like it doesn't really move a lot of needles. So having an event like you're talking about, yes, there's an investment behind it. However, clearly for you, it has shown repetitive opportunity, repetitive business because it works. So that's powerful, guys. Make sure you guys write down that nugget. That's phenomenal. I love that.
But that's back to the listing appointment. I don't want to get too far into the marketing. I think that's a totally different, stream. But it's about separating yourself from the competition and what are you doing different, because they all think we're all the same and all overpaid. It's really, those are my efforts to define myself and separate myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, brother. So as they you showcase, right, all your value, you're having this conversation with them. I know one of your strategies that you had mentioned before was like, now you really start to put pen to paper. Like, is that done at the listing appointment where you're starting to like almost like forecast and foreshadow by bringing out calendars and like moving the needle forward in the conversation? How does that work for you?
Yeah, something else that blows people's mind is I've never been on a listing appointment and brought a listing agreement. Everything's done docs. Again, it's like I've come from a different path, so I'm pretty confident I'm hired, and it's something that my TC will get drafted and get over to them once they agree to onboard. But I think you should do that? No, I think you should definitely bring a listing agreement, and often that's one of the things that you place on the table. We have a list of all the things that we do when conducting the transaction to bring value, and it's kind of setting all these things out. I was taught by Dan Smith way back, your Mary Poppins bag. Like, you don't know what you're going to need, but
right.
You need it and you don't have it. So that Mary Poppins bag becomes really important. I'm never in a hurry to showcase a net sheet, or dive into that. But if it's really important to them and they're very analytical, you need to have the competency to identify that and provide them with what they need. But as far as starting to pencil things out, when we get back to the table, is that where you want to go?
Yeah. I would love to hear like the tactics, bro. Like, I'm imagining Chris Fox at the table with like sellers, right? And like moving them forward. Are you like assuming that you're obviously assuming the close, right? You're there.
Of close the entire time. And starting a framework for those options. Obviously option number one is a quick cash transaction. We can get this done in 10 days, zero effort, as is. You take the items out of your home that you want and leave everything behind, and you're done. Take your toothbrush and here's your check. And they're leaving some meat on the bone, obviously. And I'm very passionate about ensuring that my sellers use that property as a vehicle to maximize their net. Like, that's my number one goal. And so it's always been hard for me to funnel a client down a cash offer, because I always feel like I'm doing them a disservice or something. But believe it or not, you don't know their situation, and often that is the best route for them. Option number two is, if that number's too low for them and they just can't get on board with that, often they need the home to go on the public market and have buyers compete for it and see what an asset sale looks like in its current state. I feel most often, especially in the climate we're in now, it's just going to sit and accumulate days on market, and it's going to end up with one of the investors anyways. But at least you've got that, that opportunity for them to have the buyers compete. And if nobody showed up, that's another conversation you can have with them and close it to your investor even, easier now. Option number three, based on budget and their motivation and timelines, is like, what do we need to do? I feel very confident in coming in and doing some minor improvements. So another topic that's discussed often is like, everyone's got that honeydew list. They've lived in their home for 30 years and the home speaks to them and all the flaws they see, and they have been for decades. But we walk through with a buyer's perspective, and I set them at ease. Like, I'm gonna walk through this home from a buyer's perspective. That quick walkthrough isn't going to expose all the things that you're concerned about. So often I can shrink that list, and that makes them excited. But what can we do aesthetically for the home to show its best? Decluttering, partial staging, some fresh paint, some fresh flooring, some of these minimal cost-efficient things that we can do to really get ourselves up into that next bracket. And you got to find where their threshold is. Best case scenario for me is always to get a vacant home. And often, there's lots of scenarios. I've had scenarios where my friends' parents they were moving to Idaho, and they just, their house desperately needed work. It just, yeah. But we came up with a plan. Like, look, you've got a massive undertaking in front of you. You've got 45,000 or 45 years worth of junk accumulated in the garage. You look like a hoarder. There's no way I can bring a client into your home. So what we did is we started trashing out. We started decluttering. We started organizing the things that were special to them and stacking it neatly in the garage. After we got rid of all the stuff in the garage, we condensed their life down to, a garage full of Rubbermaid tubs, a suitcase, and a toothbrush in one of the secondary bedrooms. So now I have the whole rest of the house to work on. And we came in and painted, and we did floors, and we staged, and we hit a home run. But as difficult as that process was for them, they're going to have to do that anyways. When that home went into escrow, it gives us the ability to do a quick escrow, and all the hard work was done. We got ahead of it. So when we got into escrow and we headed towards closing, they're like, grabbed their suitcase and their toothbrush, and they got on a plane and they were done. And they were so grateful that we got ahead of it and got that work out of the way ahead of time. So that was, an option that I like pushing. But getting a vacant home and doing a full rehab often is that opportunity to do what the investor's doing and capture that maximum net proceeds for themselves. And I really enjoy that route and coaching them down that road.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome. It leads back to what you talked about, like assuming the close, right? Like you focused on the details and you did solutions, right? When you focus on details, guys, you're moving and you're actually providing like real practical aspects of solution finding for them. And like what Chris is saying, this assumptive language, right, where you're helping them knock out the tasks that they need to get to the finish line, is something that most agents aren't willing to take on. So clearly they find this resounding solution with you as an agent. So that's phenomenal, Chris. I really love the way you do that without explicitly being like that salesperson, right, that speaks about what could be done. You actually get it done. That's powerful.
Talking about getting it done and not being salesy, something that's really helped me not be that guy is simply a calendar. You talk about assumptive closing, breaking out a calendar with your client, sitting down, and once they have a kind of idea of which path they're choosing. All right, some of these variables, are we're at the mercy of my stager's calendar. Let me get on the phone right now with my stager and see what her first opportunity to get staging is. And once we mark that variable, we can kind of work back from there. Get on the phone if the home needs to be deep cleansed, get on the phone right there. Have them get their calendar out. Like, what would be a good day to get the cleaners here? What day should we trash out? And go through and map out all the tasks that need to be achieved to prep the house for listing. Start booking those appointments right there on the fly with them. Get on the phone on speakerphone with your cleaner so that you're going to work for them already. There's no more assumptive close and booking, vendors to come in and get to work for us.
Yeah, that's powerful, bro. I love that. I love breaking out the calendar, setting dates in, assuming the close. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find that these sellers will get on board with you because you're leading them. That's also very, very important. And then the connection, right? You talked about like being salesy. Like I don't get the salesy thing from you. Yeah, no, not at all, bro. So then you avoid that thing like commission breath, right? Like how have you navigated those conversations where they do want to talk about commission? Like, how much are you going to charge me to sell my home? Or are you more of the laid back approach? Like, what's your strategy with that?
Yeah, you got to start making business decisions and how excited you are about taking on the project and how much life that project could potentially, suck out of you. And something with that being said is like we just did a luncheon on nexting clients and like also, having the ability to say this isn't for me. If it's just if it's gonna be a vampire and suck energy out of your life and rob you from other opportunities and energy invested better in other areas, like you also need to be able to acknowledge that and just go through the process and just determine that maybe we're not a good fit. But commission is there's so many paths they could have chose, and I have a different cost based on the project, and like I really break it down kind of budget based, but I'm really adhered to getting that 3% compensation or more, on some of these launch events, on these large luxuries, we're charging, 4% to get the budget we need to execute. But, at this point of the appointment, I don't know. I feel like I've done a really good job of providing value and installing the confidence of getting it done at a very high level and showing that I'm just not going to take some cell phone pictures and throw it on the MLS and hold my breath and wait for it to close. Like I'm actually getting to work. I've got an entire staff that's getting to work. We've got vendors that we've got to, manage. Like there's a lot of effort and I'm happy to share my presentation with anybody that's interested privately, but I mean, it does deep dives into the marketing. And by the time like we're at this point of the appointment, like I'd like to think that they see the value and they don't want to do themselves a disservice and choose a lower compensation because they do want all the attention. They do want to pay for the best version of me.
Yeah.
My attention, most often it's with the compensation and how much of my time. I really feel like it's an energy exchange, and I invest my heart and soul in every project that I do. There's nothing of me that I've left out of it, which is a blessing and a curse. But to get all of me, like it's going to cost some money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You value that. So, as we start to wind down this, guys, we got about another 10 minutes or so with Chris. At this time, I'm going to ask everybody that's watching, start popping your questions in the chat. We're going to open those up. But Chris, I would love for you to like tie this all in, right? Tie it all in, brother. You talked about arrival, mindset, first impression, seating, controlling through questions. You do the home tour. Now you start to formulate options for them. You bring out the calendar, the tangibles. You're assuming the close. The connection is there. Now, for agents that may need that, like even that first step, because you've clearly reached a point where people are giving you the come list me calls. Can you explain again how like your online presence really can create a shift on what agents can do today? Like you touched on in the beginning, but can you share like one or two things that they can do right now to move the needle forward and go maybe from that buyer's agent to the listing agent?
Well, I especially for newer agents or agents that don't have a large track record, I think, it's something that I did not do. Like I said, I learned from my mistakes, but I think the ecosystem that you're in, a lot of people are going to judge you by your online presence and what does that look like, what kind of human you are. I think, this is an opportunity to really do some self-reflection, and I've done more of that, recently than in my entire life. And, being the best versions of ourselves and being an amazing human, and, you get what you give, and start giving as much as you can. But I think video is huge. Your numbers are important. Like I said, sellers have access to more data than they ever have. And what does that look like to them? And I think the most important thing is, if you don't have that yet, you need to adhere to someone that does. Like, look at your ecosystem, check out your office. Like, what kind of support do you have? Like, I mean, newer agents can't talk about their sales history, but I know for my team members, they can go and they can talk about my track record and my launch parties and what we are doing. Everything's we. So if you don't have the opportunity in your life, I encourage you to find one. Find an ecosystem, a support system that will allow you to adhere to their track record and who they are.
That's powerful, brother. That is way, way powerful. We do got some questions coming in. Let's fire some of these questions off. I see Hilda just asked, do you bring new agents? Here we go. Hold up. Do you bring new agents on your team to listing appointments to shadow you?
Yeah, that's always an option for sure.
Okay, awesome. In the shadowing of you, do you do anything unique, like maybe debrief the listing appointment or that buyer's appointment and be like, hey, here are the tangibles taken away from it? Like, how tactically do you hold those conversations with these new agents?
Well, I'm an open book, I mean, my whole team is very aware of everything that's going on. And it's like, I've been really selfish in that capacity my entire career and never wanted to share. And I just realized, what a disservice I'm doing to myself, and a lot's shifted in me. And I feel like I'm evolving into, a new man. And I do want to share. That's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I am passionate about giving back. And collaboration is like the most important thing. Like, I just want to be around people that want to share notes and be together and like help each other, move the needle, like be amazing together. Like, there's plenty of business to go around. And if we're not working together, I think we're all doing ourselves a disservice. One more quick little nugget I wanted to get out to people is, like, you talked about determining price of the home and overcoming that. We built a worksheet that rates all the top components of the home: the kitchen, the bathrooms, the roof, the heating, the AC, pool, no pool. And we sit down with the seller and we give them the opportunity to rate their own home from 1 to 10.
Wow.
Comparing their home to, the home down the street that sold for $3 million. and their home I'm only evaluating at 1.6. It's like, why? I don't want to be the one to tell them. I want them to come up with that. So, is your kitchen still builder grade from 94? Where do you rate your kitchen? That was like a $600,000 kitchen. Do you rate it a 1 through 10? So at the end of this exercise, we'll go through and we'll evaluate this worksheet and see what kind of scores they gave their home and look at the range of comps and kind of situate their home based on the way that they scored their home.
So good, brother. I love that you walk them through that. So that way, one, they're participating, and two, they're actually seeing for themselves, right? Because that's one of the big misnomers with sellers is they feel like the upgrades they've done throughout the course of the years still hold the same value. They feel like that, $50,000 investment in their kitchen, now their house should be sold way above listing. Like, you bring them back to reality through the use of their own words and participation. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, big deal. We got a question here from Isabel. Do you line item the cost for marketing?
Never. That's top secret.
Top secret. I love that. You need the clearance, guys, for some of these questions. You need the clearance for some of these questions.
Are you talking about for like the agent pool or for the client?
I believe it was like, do you like line item the marketing for them? Like, I think it had to do with commission, right? So like this event, maybe some of the other marketing and branding for them to sell at top dollar.
No, I never have needed to. I give them some general idea of what things cost, or talk about past launch events, and like, well, Greenwood, we spent $20,000 on that launch party, and you saw the outcome there. Everyone told me I was batshit crazy. I would never sell the house for that, and we had 5 offers over asking. So it works to invest in your marketing.
I love that. We got a question in here from Josiah. Is that calendar that you talked about, is it pre-made? Is it a template, or is it simply just like your Google Calendar?
No, I just break out my phone and start working with them and aligning our time frames together, and start getting on the phone and just entering the events into my calendar on the fly.
Love that, brother. Keep it simple, guys. Keep it simple. I love that. We have another question in here. Carrie Thompson says character counts. Clearly you talked about that in the beginning, Chris. That reputation precedes you at times, right? And I think we covered some of the hot questions that were on this presentation. If you guys have any other, feel free to throw them in the chat. I got a couple rapid fires, bro. You down to do some rapid fire with me?
Sure.
Let's go. All right. How long is your appointment for the listing?
Oh, that's not predetermined. It depends on the seller. That's another little joke that I do. Do you want the fast version or the long version? And if they say fast, I'm like, great, check your email. I got the listing agreement coming over right now for my TC for you to sign. But there's no time limit. Everybody needs their own time. Every project's different, and you can't have a predetermined time frame on that. I think as long as it takes to get it done.
I love that. How do you navigate the conversation about you representing the buyer, right? So you representing the buyer. Do you find any difficulty in managing that?
No, because my track record, I've probably only double in 5 homes in my entire career. It's never my motivation. I really sell myself on being the agent that's going for the juggler for you. My interest is not double ending. I can't be bought. Like on your side, and we're getting after it. And I got it. The moons could align and it could happen, and I can do it ethically with the highest level of integrity, but it's never my goal.
Do you think then, just follow up to that, is your opinion then that that agents should only represent the seller? Like, if you had to write that policy and that law, would you lean on that? That your fiduciary duty should only be to represent the seller?
I think so, yes.
I love that, brother. I love that. Okay, awesome. And what about, I see a question here on IG. What about gifts? Parting gifts? Like, how do you make them, like, tie it all in, bro, at the end? Like, the ribbon, like, what do you do that's so special that gets a referral, that gets the hug, that gets, like, maybe the IG reel that goes fire? Like, what do you do at the end?
Yeah, we're very much a white glove service. So we like to shower gifts along the way. And my team is working on editing me back because I do too much, I think, or I spend too much. But throughout the transaction, you know, when you got to be connected to your client, you know. And I learned this from the guy that started Client Giant back in the day. It's like when you're on the phone with your client, you hear them coughing, like you could, you know, send them cold medicine immediately. You know, you gotta be there for them. Like when you know they're starting to get into packing phases, like I'm there with boxes and bubble wrap. You know, you want to be on the journey with them and provide them with all the things that they need along the way. So I try and provide that. And then, yeah, you know, closing gifts, you know, I've been known to spend too much money on those, and we're working on that. But yeah, I'm just so grateful, and I do want the referrals, and you know, and I think you know, it's definitely important.
So dope, bro. So dope, man. Well, we're tying up this call, Chris, man, brother. I just want to thank you, man, from the bottom of my heart. I mean, your honesty, your clarity. You could tell, like, you're just dropping your wisdom and your knowledge to us. And what I love is that, you know, you shared like these mechanics, these 7 or 8 nuggets, which we're gonna send to everybody out as a review. But what I think what really stood out, brother, is that like your character, your presence, like all the preparation that you do, it all comes together to be able to work for these listings. So I just want to thank you, brother.
I thank you very much so.
Outstanding. I'll say, all right, everybody that was on this call, all right, you heard it. Don't do this journey alone, right? There's so much wisdom, so much application that you could pull. And Chris and I are here to offer ourselves as this resource. Chris says he has this masterful presentation that he'll maybe share on a one-on-one. But if you're looking to have a partner, if you're looking to join the right team, the right collaboration, to get this confidence and this consistency in your business, you're ready to level up, make sure you reach out to us. We're willing to connect with you guys after this session. If you simply drop an emoji in here, reach out to Chris and I on IG, whatever that looks like for you, your best ways that you love to communicate. We'll get in contact with you. We'll set up an appointment, and we will help you guys navigate through this space. Once again, my brother Chris, thank you so much for your time, brother. I'll see you at the office, brother. We're gonna continue to sharpen iron. I love it, brother.
Let's do this. Have
Let's
a great
go.
day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. All right, guys. All right. Wow, that was a fire session with my brother Chris out here in Rancho Cucamonga. And before we wrap up, I want to invite you guys. We're doing this every Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Our next class next week is going to be breaking into the luxury market. We have our very own Vice President of Global Luxury and Growth, Miss Carrie Zier, will be live on the call. Carrie brings phenomenal experience in this space. So we'll be talking about all the tangibles, about how to break into luxury. You heard Chris talk about a few nuggets about that as well. So if today was about building the foundation to win listings, I'm telling you, next week we're going to step into another high-end space where the margins matter, where the marketing could be elevated, and where the mindset is, again, on another level. So you guys don't want to miss it. Make sure you scan that QR code there, and we will see you next week at 10 o'clock sharp, ready to break into some new ground. Till then, you guys have a phenomenal day. Stay super blessed. Stay transactional, stay action-packed. We'll see you guys next week. Have an amazing day.